Welcome back. We are now going to discuss a toolkit that is called the Tiles IoT toolkit. So, this entire discussion is based on the PhD thesis of Dr. Liladhar Gambhir, who has recently graduated under my supervision from our department. So the most of the discussions are primarily based on our work in that particular thesis, right? So, in the thesis basically we have worked in the context of smart home, right. When you talk about smart home, it is a PSS, it is a product service and system. So, we will just quickly see what is the product service and system component in a smart home and what are the issues that governs the design of a product service system in the context of smart home, and how did we finally arrive to a framework for smart home PSS design, and then how did we develop the tool, right. So, I will also demonstrate you the tool. So, the tool was practiced in our department studio, and we got very good outcome of that particular tool. So, now let us just move ahead with the discussions. Like yesterday when I discussed about different technology adoption models like TAM, TPB, etc., the question started coming in that how do I identify the factors that is going to I need to consider in the TAM or TPB. So, the basic answer was that you need to conduct a consumer behavior study, maybe through a qualitative method or maybe certain quantitative methods, and then you identify what are the attributes those are affecting the consumer behavior, and you need to consider those attributes and variables when you finally try to apply the TAM or TPB for your study. So, here also we have tried to understand that what is the consumer adoption issues in smart home. The questions that this particular PhD thesis tried to answer are, what are the fundamental terminologies in smart home IoT products. So, whenever we talk about the smart home IoT products, right. So, whenever you talk about smart home, basically you are talking about IoT, Internet of Things. So, it can be industrial IoT, it can be the home automation IoT. Here we are only talking about the smart home IoT. And which are the factors affecting the consumer adoption of smart home IoT products. So, how does this idea just came in our mind is that most of the smart home offerings that you see in the market, those are being designed by considering the Western context. But in Indian ecosystem, our daily life is very different from a household in a Western context. Most of the smart home offerings that you get, those are being designed considering the user behavior in the Western nations or maybe in the developed cities, right. So, now in the Indian multicultural fabric, how do we consider the smart home adoption? Because our day to day challenges in home is very different. We have joint families, we have different way of operating, we have different kind of utensils and equipments, and for that matter different objects in our home, which is not similar to an maybe a Western ecosystem. So, when but there is a huge market for a smart home as a PSS offering. So, there are people in the Indian consumer market who are looking for smart home offerings. So, how do you map these gaps? So, what is the consumer expectations, what kind of problems and the consumer pain points that we have in terms of leading their day to day life, right, and then what are the different offerings that an organization can come up with. So, for that matter we started doing a consumer behavior study and we actually tried to understand that what is the motivation or barriers for adoption of smart home in Indian context. So, in yesterday's discussion we have talked about these models like the theory of resonance action, the theory of planned behavior, the unified theory of acceptance, use of technology, technology acceptance model, norm activation model, value based adoption model, technology readiness index, innovation diffusion theory, perceived risk theory, and cognitive dissonance theory. So, these were the theories that we discussed in the yesterday's class. Now, the question is, given this kind of a situation that we are doing now a study in order to understand the user behavior from the perspective of technology acceptance and technology adoption in the context of smart home in right. So, in Indian scenario. So, we try to do some trial and test of different these methods. We found that the TAM was actually evolving as a very powerful tool in this particular context. So, what is learning point for you is that you have these tools in your basket. So, depending on the kind of situation that you are encountering with, you need to pick up tools, do some trial and error, then you finally decide on a specific tools and methods, right. So, in our case, we actually decided on the TAM as a model. Now, how did we analyze the characteristics of smart home production surfaces? We took Kano model as a reference. So, the Kano model, as you know, it's a method prescribed by Noreki Kano. Again, it's a Japanese model. So, which basically talks about the classification of the user requirements in 6 different categories like attractive, one dimensional, must be, reverse, questionable, right. So, I am not going to discuss the Kano model in Kano model here. Just for your information, we use Kano model as a framework to analyze user behavior, so that we could identify the attractive features of smart home, right. So, smart home as an offering, right. So, we tried to build this kind of stories, and we started developing this kind of scenarios in the user behavior study. For example, television giving updates of surrounding and who is on door apart from their main purpose, right. So, so if you directly ask these questions to your consumers, they will not be able to answer, right. So, so learning point from here is that whenever you are doing a user behavior study in this kind of a given situation, you need to give them scenarios, you need to give them stories where the product and service is integrated. You cannot get the insights from the consumer by direct questioning or maybe a stereotype questionnaire, right. So, so you need to be very creative in designing those instruments on the basis of which you are actually going to capture the insights of the user. So, so we are developing those scenarios and those stories, and on the basis of this creative questionnaire, we started collecting data about the user behavior, and then we started identifying, okay, these are the different attributes that those basically affect the user behavior in smart home, right, and that too in Indian context. The other context may be the garage door opens up when it detects the car is coming. So, the garage door automatically opens up. Home door welcomes the owner and alerts when it detects unauthorized entry. So, the limitation of the entire study was that we considered the metropolitan cities in India. So, we did not consider the urban or the semi-urban or for that matter the rural areas, because the proximity of this smart home as an offering for that segment of customer is still very less. So, we actually considered the consumers in living in metropolitan cities or maybe A-class cities, right, and primarily people who are living in apartments, right, rather than living in individual household. So, we have finally arrived to the definition of the smart home PSS, right. So, what is learning point for you here is that how do you define PSS in a given context, right. So, the PSS for the food delivery system, how do you imagine, or how would you like to define PSS in food delivery system, right. Yesterday during the discussion of the topic, you proposed lot many different areas. No? So you should be able to define that in your context. How do you define PSS? Like one basic challenge given to you was that how do you identify the product part of it, service part of it, and system part of it, and then finally how do you define the PSS context in that particular given situation. So in our context, that is in the smart home, we defined it like the smart home PSS is an IT driven value creation business strategy consisting of various stakeholders as the players and residents, right. So in this whenever you talk about service and system, actually you are dealing with so many different stakeholders, so many different entities. In the morning session also, Tom talked about different stakeholders and right. So different entities and the systems thinking, because the moment you are talking about PSS, you need to apply systems thinking, right. So it is not the traditional product design approach is going to help you, right. So so continuing with the various stakeholders as these players and residents of smart systems as the infrastructure and home, smart and connected products as the media and tools, and their generated e-services as the key values delivered that continuously strive to meet individual customer needs sustainably within the context of a residence, right. So that this is the way basically we try to define smart home product service system. So here we are talking about how do we integrate different stakeholders in this particular ecosystem, what are the different gadgets and different objects that you are basically integrating, and what is the technology that you are using, what are different kind of sensors or different connectivity algorithms maybe you are using, and then how you are finally creating a value, right. So that continuously strive to meet individual customer needs sustainably, right. So in the tool that we have developed, there we have considered the 17 sustainable development goals, right. So from so you may pick up any of those 17 sustainable development goals and then you may move ahead, right. So we actually took that kind of an approach. So where the sustainability is in concern, if you look into the basic theories of PSS, you will find lot of literature basically talks about the sustainability, the link of sustainability with PSS. In the inaugural session of Tom he himself argued on that particular aspect. So so consumer is sustainability within the context of a residence. So our context is only limited to residence, right. So so from our study, finally we arrived to a conceptual framework of the smart home product service system. So in this particular framework, you can see this product part separate. So you can see this is the product part, this is the service part, right. So so in the product part you can see independent, adaptive, reactive, multifunctional, ability to cooperate, proactive, self-descriptive, communication and collaboration. So this particular SSPSS has been developed based on the basic framework of product service system, right. So this is an empirical study. So you already have an established framework for product service system. So we have just tried to experiment with the existing framework of product service system, and then you have tried to blend it with the specific issues of smart home, right. So for your project that you are doing as a part of this course, you can follow the this SSPSS framework, right, because it is built on the basic PSS framework only. So here we have identified that these are the product attributes. Service attributes, we have identified that the context awareness, interpretation, personalization, user friendly environment, human like interaction, personality, cooperation and openness. So, these are the service factors that we have identified in the context of smart home, right. So, we have very clearly identified what are the product attributes which is tangible and what is the service attribute which is intangible, right. Then you see when you talk about product, it is basically your orientation is the product orientation, right. This is use orientation. Use orientation is what? The mix of product and service, right. Result orientation is the service. Finally, as a consumer, you are hardly concerned about what the product is, fine. So, finally, what is the service, right. So, finally, is the consumer satisfaction, whether your purpose has been met or not, right. So, that is the result orientation. So, whenever you talk about product, your orientation is the product orientation. Whenever you are between product and service, it is basically the use orientation mixed of the product and service. But when you are talking about pure service, basically you are talking about the result orientation. So, the result orientation. So, whenever you are talking about the product service system, you need to be very clear about these three aspects. Then we talked about the digital capabilities, right. So, in the digital capabilities, we basically talked about three attributes: intelligence, connectivity and analytic. In terms of intelligence, we talked about embedded systems, sensor as actuators, edge computing and fog computing. When you talked about connectivity, we talked about Internet of Things, we talked about wireless, we talked about cloud computing communication. When you talked about analytics, we talked about the big data analytics, digital twin and AI technology, right. So, then these are the basic three focus that we have identified. So, whenever we are going for product service system design, we arrive to the conclusion that we need to focus on these three. One we are calling is service dominant, that is in short we are calling it SD. That your entire focus should be service domination. So, service has to predominate this entire aspect. Like in Tom's lecture also he talked about that, okay, in certain aspects the domination is more of the product. In certain aspect you find the domination of service is more, right. Here we have taken a position, you need to take a position that in this particular PSS, who is dominating, right. So, in this particular case, we identified that it has to be more of service domination. And the closed loop design, the SSPSS closed loop design and co-creation rules. So, it has to be so intelligent, so that it can co-create, right. It has to evolve, right. It has to evolve and it should be able to collaborate and co-create, right. So, this was the basic vision that we have talked about. So, service dominant, data driven value creation and closed loop design. So, this is the overall framework of the product service system design that we have visualized for our case. So, our case is the PSS design for smart home, right. I am just repeating, right. So, the basic framework for any PSS would look like this. So, basic structure of, so if you look into the skeleton of the PSS, right, skeleton of the PSS framework, you will find that the product and service, right. You need to identify what are the product attributes, what are the service attributes in terms of where your focus is, right. You need to also identify your capabilities in terms of the mix of the product and service, right, and how to define those capabilities of that particular PSS, right, and what is the vision of your PSS, right. So, what are the basic focus that you would like to have as a visionary offering of your PSS, right. So, this is the skeleton of any PSS framework, and for example, I am showing you the framework that we have developed for smart PSS. This is an outcome of more than 2 years work. So, right, so as far as your project is concerned, you won't be able to. So, it takes lot of time, right. So our expect as because I am showing you a PhD work. So, what is expected is that a company who is into smart home PSS design, right, they can adopt to this framework and their designers can actually work like this. So, this is our proposal. So, this is what we are proposing to the organizations who are into design of PSS for smart home, right. So, this is what we are proposing, right. So, at your stage you won't be able to do that in this particular course, but what is learning for you is that understand the framework, and when you do the exercise try to get some inspiration from this framework and then try to identify the attributes. Yeah. Please speak a little bit louder.
So the question is, with things moving towards smart, like technology evolving towards our home.
It's on, it's on.
Oh, hello. Okay. Yeah. So how much do you think importance should be given to you know, uh, something private? Like home is a very private thing. So smart homes, people is like very excited about it, but at the same time, people are also concerned about their privacy. So in the survey, like while
Yes, yes. So, I'm just repeating her question for the benefit of all. She was asking that, okay, the moment we talk about PSS design, the data privacy is something very important, right? And she was also referring to that, sorry, because you're talking about now PSS and smart home. So, data privacy is something very important, right. So, for any PSS that you talk about, so the moment you are dealing with financial data, health data or personal data, right. So, the data privacy is something very important, right. Primarily the financial data, health data and the personal data, right. So, I am fully with agreement with you that the moment we talk about this kind of PSS, that has to be considered, that has to be definitely considered, because when you talk about the data driven value creation, right. So, the when we are talking about data driven value creation, data security and data privacy, and how do I ensure your data privacy, that is definitely there, that is definitely there, there is no disagreement, right. So, whenever you talk about the data driven value creation, we are talking about the cloud computing, we are talking about the data driven value creation, definitely the data security and data privacy issues will come in, right. Thank you for pointing me that.
so that we again, how you first talked about the smart homes concept being applied in Indian context. I
Yes,
think there
yes,
again the people would find it more difficult to accept such.
yes, 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 obviously, because again the like the barriers and the acceptance, no, like she was pointing out, the moment you talk about in Indian context, again those things will come, right, because the privacy issues will come. Yeah, right. So, from our research we identified 7 different toolkits, uh, those are being used in industry, right. So, the organizations who are into PSS design, they tend to use this 7 tools, and most of these tools are basically card based tools, right. So, we have actually interviewed lot of professionals who are into PSS design, and you found that they use these different 7 types of card based tools. So, card and dice co-create the IoT design decks, IoT design IoT ideation design kit, no cards, mapping the IoT, and Tiles IoT toolkit. So, we finally decided to take Tiles IoT toolkit as the basic reference toolkit to design the smart home PSS design toolkit, right. So, this is the basket of toolkits available for you. If you are a PSS designer, you can pick up any of these tools, and these are all ideation toolkit, right. These are all ideation toolkits, and most of them are card based toolkits, right. And then it's a game that the designers they play, and then on the basis of that they come up with different concepts, right, PSS concepts. So, we took Tiles IoT toolkit as our reference toolkit to design the tool for smart home PSS design. This is the mapping of different toolkit, right. So, we identified these 6 different attributes on the basis of which we analyzed these toolkits, because the moment I say these are 7 different toolkits, all these 7 different toolkits have different pros and cons, right. So, in different contexts different toolkits work better, right. So, then so we just try to identify that from problem solving, from inspiration, from ideas, from technical capabilities, from mitigating implementation problem or for planning implementation perspective, which toolkit is lying where. So, we just tried to do a mapping, and then we found that the Tiles IoT toolkit. So, it was basically talking about it was basically in between the problems and the technical capabilities, and then we decided to go ahead with it, the Tiles IoT toolkit. So, as a designer, you need to take your conscious decision. So, when I talk about different tools and methods, right. So, yesterday we have talked about different methods for technology acceptance study and technology adoption. So, here I am proposing you 7 different toolkits for PSS design. So, which toolkit are you going to pick up? It is you need to take a conscious decision, right. So, you need to understand that which particular toolkit is having is more powerful in a specific aspect, right. So, depending on the context you decide the toolkit, and we took a decision to go ahead with the Tiles IoT toolkit. Yeah. No. All these toolkits are for any PSS, any product service system. PSS toolkit is our contribution. Smart home PSS toolkit design is the outcome of our PhD, right. But these are all generic toolkits available for any PSS designer. Like the kind of problem that you are encountering with, you can pick up any of these toolkits. I'll explain you the Tiles IoT toolkit. It is a small change in the so our toolkit is a empirical study on the Tiles IoT toolkit, and we have done some modification on the basic Tiles IoT toolkit, right. So, you will be able to understand it in the context of smart home, right. Yeah. These are generic toolkits for any PSS design.
Regarding co-create the IoT, so is it relevant to participatory design?
Participatory design. So, when you talk about the co-create the IoT, we are talking about the participatory
And it's
design.
different from, like, how is it different from card and dice, because over there also, like, we are taking feedback.
There also you are taking feedback, but this co-create and IoT is basically link between the problems and the inspiration, right. So, maybe you are not going very deep into technical capabilities. You are more into problems and inspiration, because the moment you talk about the co-design, you may not consider much of the technical capabilities and the technical constraints, right, that way. Now, come to smart home PSS innovator toolkit. So, this is the toolkit that we have developed, right. So, again it is a card based tool. So, this is how the toolkit was being administered, and you can see some of your seniors there maybe, right. So, people who are from our department. So, they participated in using this particular toolkit. Okay. So, again it is a brainstorming game, it is a brainstorming game kind of a thing, right. So, the basic layout of the toolkit looks like this, right. So, so you get a big sheet, and where you have different positions. I'll show you the entire protocol, how do you play it, and you have different cards, right. So, the basic layout looks like this. You have triggers, you have things, you have responses, right. So, here you put the cards, you have some reflection criteria, benefits and barriers, right. You have some missions, right. Okay. So, let me talk about the cards now. So I have basically 4 sets of cards. One is the domain cards that you talk about a scenario. You talk about a scenario or a persona, right? So so in smart home, the scenario you can start with the baby, or maybe an elderly who is there in the home, or maybe you start the scenario with a homemaker, or maybe both husband and wife are working. So in different scenarios you start building. So scenario and persona, right? So in the domain cards, with the help of domain cards, you can develop different scenario because there are already predefined personas. Technology cards, you have things. Things are the physical objects that you encounter in your daily life, right? Like the objects that Don Norman talks about, right? So design of everything. So what are the different objects that you encounter, right from the toothbrush to the reading lamp that you finally switch off before going to bed, right? So what are different objects that you encounter? So those I am calling things. It can be different sensors, those are attached to those objects, right? Services, what are different services that you are getting through those objects? Human actions, what are different human actions that you do with those objects, and what are different feedback you start getting from those objects, right? So things, sensor, services, human actions and feedback. So these are all technology cards, provide simple descriptions of technology like things, sensor, data and user interfaces. Mission cards spice up your mix by providing provocative design goals. I give you a design goal, right? So I give you a design goal. So the design goal may be the mitigating the risk of an elderly in home, right? So you have a design goal, right? So or maybe empowering the kid to learn himself or herself, right? So how do you give different design goals? So those are your mission cards. As I told you, we also took the inspiration from the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, on the basis of which again we tried to define the mission cards. Then the criteria cards are the cards on the basis of which you evaluate the ideation. Remember, this particular tool you are going to administer with your designers. You have a group of designers and you are going to, you have given them the basic design brief. Okay, this is what my client is looking for, and then you expect your designers to come up with your idea. So again in the morning the design fixation was debated, right? So so why do you use all these tools in order to overcome those design fixation? Otherwise your designer may have some preconceived idea, right? Or he or she has seen some this kind of offering somewhere, and many times his or her entire idea may get biased towards what he or she has seen. So in order to avoid those, basically you use these tools. So you very clearly talk about, okay, this is my mission criteria. These are the domain cards. These are the things cards that you have, and you have certain criteria cards. Like we have different design screening method, like Stuart Pook design screening method, right? So these criteria cards are screening methods on the basis of which you are going to screen the concept. So as designer, we all know that you need to have a basket of concepts, and then finally you do a synthesis, and then you arrive to your final solution. Does not mean that the concepts, those are not getting qualified as a part of the solution, you need to throw it out, right? So it has to be kept in your archive for your future reference. But you need to have certain criteria on the basis of which you are going to do the synthesis and do the sorting of the concepts those are being generated by your design team. So for that matter, you have these criteria cards help to reflect and coverage towards meaningful ideas, right? So those are, we call the reflection cards, or so in our case we are calling it reflection cards, right? So those are criteria cards. So as I showed you the layout of the tool, so it goes like this. So first you create a scenario. You take a specific scenario in a smart home context perspective. You pick up persona in the scenario. What are the different persona? Those are going to play a role in that particular story, right? Then you define the missions. So these are the missions of this particular ideation exercise. Then you pick up things, no? Then you pick up things, right? Then you come to the triggers, right? So if you pick up these things, if you pick up these objects, what are the triggers of those? What are the triggers of those sensors, or what are the triggers of those objects? Then after the trigger, you get the responses, feedback. The first is the pick up the object, right? It will give some trigger and then some feedback, right? So things, triggers, then responses, right? After responses, then you flesh out your concepts, right? So if this is the scenario, if these personas are there in this particular scenario, and if these are the objects that they are interacting with, and these are the triggers that they are getting from these objects, and as a result of these triggers, this is the feedback which is coming to the entire system. So then what is my idea, right? So then you start developing those storyboards. You might have now imagined that this is going to create lot of stories, right? So we are actually inspiring the designers to write the story of it, right? So then then you flesh out the idea. Once you have the idea, then you have the criteria. So the criteria cards are basically, as I told you, evaluation. So how, on the basis of which you are going to evaluate, right? So it can be the benefits or the barriers, right? So what are the benefits of this kind of an idea, and what are the barriers of this kind of idea, right? Okay, I'll further explain it to you in detail. I've just shown you the protocol. That is the protocol. Now let me go step by step. Start by selecting a persona and a scenario, right? So you pick up, so persona and scenario, those will go together hand to hand. You create, okay, this is my scenario and this is my persona, or by maybe these are the two personas and this is the story, this is the scenario that you have agreed to focus on. What specific needs or problems are you trying to solve for the user selected? So whatever the persona that you have selected, what are their problems that you are trying to solve? What are the problems that you are trying to solve? You can place the chosen scenario and persona cards in the card placeholders at the bottom left of the corner board. Then refine the mission. Challenge yourself to think creatively about the purpose or mission of your idea. Use up 3 missions card to challenge and guide your idea, right? So you pick up certain mission cards that, okay, this is the basic objective or mission of my entire ideation exercise. What objects are central to your user? What objects are central to your users, and how they can help solving the needs you have identified, right? So what are the, so if this is the scenario and these are the personas, what are the objects that they are going to interact with? Look through the things cards. So then you have a set of things card, and we have actually documented all the different things that you are going to, most likely you are going to interact with in a smart home context, right? So you start picking up those things cards. Select a few of them as your starting point and place them on the card placeholder in the things section of the board. You may not pick up all the things card at a time. Maybe you pick up 1 or 2 or 3, then you start again. You may go, again it's an iterative process. You can go back to the previous step and then you can again pick up cards. Though it looks so linear in the entire protocol, actually it's not, right? So you can go to any step. What actions trigger the thing? Explore what type of input are needed, whether they are human actions, sensors or services, right. So, whether there is a physical human action, right. So, because many times your triggers the sensor may not give you the trigger, you actually need a human action for that particular trigger. So, whether there is a so you need to very clearly talk about whether it is a human action or a sensor or a service from a connected source. A thing can have multiple triggers, right. A thing can have multiple triggers and same trigger can affect multiple things, right. So, so a thing can have multiple trigger and the same trigger can again affect multiple things. Place your selections on the card placeholder in the trigger section of the board. How does the object respond to when it is triggered? So, when how it actually object responds to when that particular trigger happens. Responses allow the object to communicate back to the user when it is triggered, either by direct feedback from the object itself or by sending data to an app or service through or services through services. So, through service component you are sending data to the server, right, as a feedback. So, that becomes your responses section on the board. So, all those feedbacks will finally go to the responses section of the board. Then comes flesh out the idea. The storyboard section of the board is your sandbox to describe and illustrate the idea you are working on. Finally, so from designer I am going to get a storyboard. So, we actually give them the sheets, so where they actually draw and do the entire storyboarding. So, flesh out the storyboard section of the board is your sandbox to describe and illustrate the idea you are working on. Try to make notes and sketches to show how, where and when the concept works and looks and what it might feel like to use it. Imagine a story which depicts a use case for your object. You can sketch each step on a post-it or stick them in the boxes, right. So, we have also provided them the sticky notes and different other materials. Reflect and improve. Look through different criteria and discuss how well your concept scores on each, right. So, now you have the criteria cards. Those are the filters that you are going to now put and then check, right. So, discuss how well your concept scores on each. Select a few strengths and weaknesses of the concept and see if you can come up with the improvements. To resolve the weaknesses, you can change and other cards and the storyboard if you feel the need. Write down the brief description of the final idea in the elevator pitch box. So, final is the elevator pitch box. So, from the storyboard finally you get the elevator pitch box. Yeah. So, these are reflection cards. I am just showing you the reflection card first, on the basis of which we were evaluating the concepts. So, first reflection card is the context awareness. So, so we are just trying to understand that. So, ability of a system or a system component to gather information about its environment at any given time and adapt behaviors accordingly. For example, how your smart home products sense the environment and provide services accordingly. So, that may be the context awareness. So, whether your PSS recognizes the context, that in what context you are using it, right. So, whether because you expect that your all the entities of the smart home should understand in which context you are using that particular product, or like the lighting system in your home in the morning, in the evening, or maybe in the late evening, right, or maybe in the late afternoon, you expect to be different, right. When you are having dinner and when you are watching TV, you expect it to be different. So, whether your system is being able to understand those contexts, whether your system is capable to understand whether it has the awareness for the context. Multifunctional, capability to perform more than one function, right. So, whether like in your day to day behavior, you find that one particular object actually performs multiple functions, right. So, whether the system that you are developing, whether it is being able to do multiple functions like ability to cooperate, right. So, whether the PSS that you have designed for in the context of smart home, whether it is being whether it is able to cooperate, right. So, to work with other products to achieve a result what is beneficial. So, whether the compatibility with the other product is there or not, whether it is being able to communicate with the other objects or not. Is your smart home being able to communicate with other SSPSS? Personalization, tailored products to accommodate a specific individual or a group. If whether your PSS allows your user to go for some amount of personalization, whether the degree of customization is there or not, and whether some amount of personalization it is allowing or not. The question is in how to judge is your SSPSS able to understand your mood and feeling and being able to alter the environment accordingly, right. Accessibility, openness is the accessibility of knowledge, technology and other resources and transparency of actions. How to judge, is your smart home product able to detect and connect with other SSPSS? Would your other smart products be able to perform tasks by a single command, right. So, that is the openness, right. So, whether it is only restricted to your kind of thing or it is more open. So, these were the criteria cards that we developed. I do not have much time, I will just quickly show you the other cards. Like these were the mission cards that we have developed, that is so the cards say independent, adaptive, reactive, human like interaction, personality, interpretation, proactive, self description, collaboration. So, these were the mission cards, basically those define the goal of the entire exercise. Benefit cards, we created benefits card like the health related benefits, environment benefit, financial benefit, psychological well-being, social inclusion, luxury and status, resilience, technological enthusiasm, trust, safety and security, like she was talking about the trust, safety and security. Barrier cards with the technological barriers, financial barrier, ethical barrier, there can be ethical barrier, legal barrier, knowledge gap, psychological resistance, language challenges, lifestyle and resistance to control. These were the barriers that we identified, and on the basis of this we have created these barrier cards. Persona cards were like this: homemaker, husband, working woman, child, grandparents, meat cook, grocery shop owner, delivery boy, daughter, son. These were the personas that we had created. Things card were electric kettle, gas stove, chimneys, modular dining space, refrigerator, pressure cooker, induction cooktops, kitchen weighing scale, microwave oven, right. I am just giving you some example: water purifier, rice cooker, food grain storage machine, toaster, deep fryer, storage for wet dishes, atta maker machine, cutting accessories, lunchbox warmer. So, these were the different things that we had identified to be considered in the SSPSS design. So, this was the, I am again showing you the toolkit. This was the toolkit, then this is how people work, right. So, the final outcome was demonstrated like this. So, we found, so if you look into this green buildings, no. So, that so the blue portion is the without the tool. So, again we experimented with a control group and an experiment group. We found that after using this Tiles IoT toolkit and this brainstorming game, people could actually come up with wonderful PSS design ideas in relation to the smart home. We could get very good ideas, and those were really implementable concepts, right. So, so this was on the basis of the peer review. We also then did a review from experts, so the industry experts who are into PSS, right. So, who are into PSS, that too in offering different services to in smart home segment. So from there and from their viewpoint also, we found that this particular tool actually works effectively, right. So I conclude here. So the main learning points from this is that how do you understand the entire framework of PSS. So in your case, how do you identify different attributes of PSS, and then I have also proposed you set of different toolkits. Those can be useful for any PSS project that you do. I have explained you an use case where we have taken Tiles IoT toolkit as a reference, and we have tried to develop, we have actually modified the Tiles IoT toolkit in the context of smart home, which can be useful for a smart home designer, right. So I conclude here. Any question so far? No.
Sir, regarding
Yeah. We don't have much time because the second session is going to start. Maybe we can take one or two questions.
Sir, regarding the toolkit, what could be the limitations of this toolkit?
Yeah, so we have not, so first limitation, as I told you, is that though we are talking about the Indian context, our basic customer segment that we have decided is the people who are living in the cities, primarily in the metropolitan cities, that too in apartments. We have not considered different small towns or different villages, but we expect that the smart home offerings finally has to reach to the different segment, different geographic and demographic segment of this country.
And sir,
That was one.
Why is it so like, why tier 1 only and why can't?
Because yeah, so we did some initial interview. We found that in the other segment, or maybe in the tier 2 cities or maybe towns, they have never seen a smart home kind of a scenario. So it becomes very difficult to do a user research. The people are not in fact aware of that this kind of things exist.
For the result that you displayed, for such experiment, what should be the sample size and what are those slider indicating?
This slider is so this is 0 to actually it was 0 to 10 scale, right. So this slider is actually indicating that sorry, not 0 to 10, it was 0 to 7, right. So this is basically indicating that how efficient it is in terms of perceived ease of use, perceived usefulness, context awareness, multifunctional, ability to cooperate, personalization, openness, and your service dominance design. So these were the attributes that we selected to evaluate the ideas, right. So sample size, it depends on this particular depends on the kind of experiment that you are conducting. So in our case it was 80. In our case it was 80.
And sir, suppose for the example, perceived ease of use. So
Yeah.
it is 5.67. So how that number came?
That's the mean.
So
That's the mean value.
so the contestant was
Like we administered questionnaires to the peers, and we asked peers to rate. So we just exchanged the sheets. So one group sheet was exchanged with the other group, and the other group was rating them. So this was peer rating. So and we actually administered a questionnaire where we put all these attributes, and looking into the entire design, they started rating their design from these variables, and the value that you see is 3.13 or 5.67. That is the mean value, and it showed it also showed the statistical significance that the rating was highly it was significantly varied between the control group and the experiment group. Thank you.